The story behind the story of the student protests yesterday all across the country and all through the region of Chattanooga is one that touches what we could say is the devolved and fallen character of the American individual. That is to say, the American people are a much different class, a much different type of person than they were when Alexis de Tocqueville visited the United States in the 1830s and wrote, when he came back, the book Democracy in America. I've got the 2-volume edition with the editing by John Stuart Mill. In that tour, he came to find out how the Americans were managing a new idea at the time, which was prisons. It was a humanistic concept of redemption, the prison, and he was here to find out what the Americans had done with this innovation, this progressive innovation, serving as it came to be the modern welfare socialist state. Now, he was a conservative and a very free market oriented person with delightful insights about the American character. And what happened in the decades since that visit, 1830, 1930, and here we are nearing 2020. You know, we're at 2017, right? 2018 right now. It's a couple hundred years back, and what we are looking at is a way in which the American lives his life, and a loss of something that he had previously, which I would describe as a virtue. The virtue is a kind of strength of character, a kind of a physical interest, a self-determination, to use very general terms, that Americans had back when he was in this country making his tour, meeting people and noticing how they were indeed a very free people, aside from, of course, the slaves, that they were getting together in ever larger numbers across the North and the South. And that loss of character is distinctly in view in the reporting and interviews that we've had and made here at the station, and that have been published in the past couple of days regarding the protests of thousands of students across the country against school violence. Everybody's dead set against school massacres. There's a widespread consensus that if a young man comes into a school with a semi-automatic rifle with a banana clip and starts pulling the trigger, this is wrong. Now, I'm having a little fun in saying that. Of course, we're all against that. But what there was distinctly in this part of the country, in the Chattanooga area, was a spiritual analysis that was heard in Red Bank yesterday morning about 11 o'clock, and elsewhere the claims made were against the widespread availability of rifles and pistols. A call and clamor for there to be federal regulation, federal control on weapons, of course, which is unconstitutional and lawless. So here we have people who are in a class of people victimized by lawful use of firearms. That would be public school students, shot down here, shot down there, and repeatedly across the country for the past 20 years, and objecting to that and saying, well, we need to have a lawless act to protect ourselves. So there was also that element. Not the anti-Second Amendment claim was not as strong here in the Chattanooga area as it was elsewhere, where the demand was that Congress, using the mental health theory, go after the right to bear arms by targeting people who are unstable, who have mental conditions, who have given evidences of hostile, wicked, violent intent, either on Facebook or elsewhere, and that those people, if they are properly surveilled and evidence gathered against them, their intentions, they can be stripped of their rights, even as President Trump has suggested, prior to their having been due process, right? Prior to the procedures required being followed, there is a peremptory and summary seizure of a person's arsenal, perhaps, or maybe it's just one rifle and one box of clips and ammunition. That can be seized apart from due process, which of course requires there to be a search warrant or actual threats having been made of particular validity, and then a gathering of evidence about a wicked plan or a wicked publication of a wicked plan. Those are all actionable criminally under the terroristic threat statutes in all the states, and perhaps even in the federal venue. And so we have these protests. But what I really want to get to here is why we don't have as strong a local economy as we could. And part of the reasoning that we don't have a vigorous and rich local economy, that we're not an independent city-state yet, while we are very, very long in getting in that direction, is because of our fear. We are a fearful people in Chattanooga, and we've been trained to be fearful by public administration, by the state itself, and also by the press. I mean, the press simply reflects, the media simply reflects the established narrative, right? Whatever that established narrative is, you can be sure that it will be reflected in press coverage. And I have made note of that in just reading the accounts in the Times Free Press. TV9 has done some good coverage of these protests, quoting people, and we are fearful. We are fearful of paper. Right? We are, in a way, in Chattanooga, not rich and not prosperous because we are bound by chains of paper. We are bound by federal statute, by all kinds of laws that we agree to obey. We agree to obey them because we get free money from Uncle Sam, and we have our state governments willingly imposing all kinds of rules and regulations against the people to get the federal money. So there's a pecuniary interest by state governments who have abandoned their people. Right? Most state governments, I'd guess that probably every state government in the United States has abandoned its people and is operating as a freestanding enterprise. And we know that that's true legally, because every criminal case is styled State of Tennessee versus so-and-so. And not the state is no longer a steward or an agent of the people. It is its own separate entity, victimized by criminal acts. That's why it pretends to have standing to sue criminally people who are, it accuses of robbery or theft or some kind of paper violation. It has its own identity. And so these states are separate from the people. They're not stewards of the people's interest, and they're not representative anymore. They are independent of them. And they are, in the older understanding, they are the government, as opposed to the state, the free state of, say, Tennessee, or the free state of Georgia. And they, being independent, they have worked up through deceptive practices over decades a fear in the people, and we can see that fear in the coverage of these protests. And here's what I think what we want to make note of is that these students who entered into these protests around Chattanooga were very, very careful to consult with administration. They were very careful to effectively get permission to do what is a violent act. A violent act in the sense that a protest is not something that, in many respects, it's not something that you simply say, well, let me go and get permission to say no. Okay, let me go and get permission to make an objection, or to stand on my own 2 feet and declare myself as for something or as against something. That is, again, we have this process, this habit of thought taught to us by school itself. Schools are the place where this lower type of character, this lesser man than de Tocqueville met, that kind of man is created. That kind of woman is created in public administration, in the school system, which is run by the state. Yesterday morning, we heard the clanking of a cable sound. It was, and I let the sound run for a couple minutes as y'all listened. You couldn't really hear the breeze passing over the microphone of Sam Jordan, our correspondent, but you did hear the clank of the flags cable against the pole outside in the courtyard of Red Bank High School. And there were hundreds of students standing around there. And a prayer was made to God, and it touched on the spiritual condition of those who would do injury to their neighbors. And the event was a mourning of the killing of 17 young adults in Parkland, Florida high school. And there was but the whole thing there, as elsewhere, was either permitted or not permitted. Now, when it's permitted, that is to say, there is approval by our bettors, right? Approval by the students' bettors that this is okay. I'm going to let you do this. But in some other places, there was simply a prohibition of it. And here's a little file, and the file I'm downloading from the Chattanooga Time Free Press website. The story this morning, I think maybe by Tyler Jett, the reporter at the paper, and he was good enough to obtain and put on the Time Free Press website the sound file of Steve Bartow, the principal teacher. That's what principal means, principal teacher. Of course, principals today don't teach anything. They are simply bureaucrats. They are paper shufflers and guideline enforcers. He is on the microphone, the amplifier that booms into each neon lit classroom with its rows of desks and young people waiting for the day to begin and being to be told what to do, right? To be told what to read, which book to open, what now to consider. The teacher at the head of the class, and he is interrupting that to talk about the day's events. And here he is.
And so those students got together and they started planning a way in which students could have a voice in an appropriate way, and one that was very impactful.
Appropriate way.
Designing a public forum where we invite community leaders and state leaders, elected officials, to hear our students and hear their voice. And so that work began, and then unfortunately we had our incident on Wednesday, 2 weeks ago. And
that is to say that it was a teacher who was not quite right in his mind, who had a firearm and fired a shot through a window. There was a school lockdown. That's the reference there. And that's it. This principal is at that school.
So put that work behind
Dalton.
Behind just a little bit. But I want to let you know that work is continuing to go on. In fact, I met with our school student council. Some other students are involved with this as well, and they're moving forward. In fact, they have a date now set for their public forum. They're going to be reaching out to you via Canvas for questions that you would like to see answered. And so I wanted you to know that is continued to move forward. It's important that we listen to you.
These are hundreds of students in Dalton High School. They're hearing the principal, and he's going to be. I want you just to listen with me and pull out the strands of our loss of hope, our loss of character as Americans, and our fear. He is appealing to fear, and he is appealing to the interest of students to not be written up. Don't be written up by all means. That's the worst absolute thing you could do, is to be written up, and it would be a mark on your record that you walked out. Oh, we cannot have that. That is simply not to be done. You cannot possibly dream of doing that. You would be causing a disturbance. Steve Bartow.
You know that. It's important that you have a voice and be able to seek it, but it's also equally important that you do that in a way that is safe, that doesn't cause confrontation, is done in a respectful way.
Safe, doesn't cause confrontation, is done in a respectful way. These are the people hearing this are the future leaders and entrepreneurs, the future risk takers, the future adventurers, the future explorers, the devisers of new technology, the devisers of dangerous techniques in the future, or are they?
So that's why we're not going to be participating in any sort of a walkout. I wanted to give you some ideas about some things that could do, because I know there's some of you that just want to honor the victims of the Parkland situation.
Now, what he's doing here is he's turning this interest in protest and anger to make it a channeling. He's rechanneling the impulse that students have to be angry, just to walk out in indignation that schools are these places where people get shot down in mass numbers. And people are not protected. There's no care in loco parentis of these school systems of caring for each individual son or daughter in the same way that a mom or dad would. That can't be done. It's not going to be done. There's no plan for it to be done.
Took place 2 weeks ago. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about that.
This is pretty short.
Again, walking out of class is just not a good idea. It's not a good idea to protest. You can't just walk out. So he wants to make it so that if people do something, well, that they're doing it to remember the slain. So again, that's a sentimental appeal, an approach that we want there to be evocation of your sentiment, evocation of your sympathy. We want that. We'll have that expressed. Therefore, it's not a protest anymore. No, it is a communing, a coming together in an alternative channel. It's hard for us to keep you as safe as we can in the building. And
sure.
It can cause some confrontation in some way, perhaps.
There might be a confrontation in some way, perhaps, whether a student maybe believes in the right to bear arms and another student says, no, we have to have Congress absolutely ban long guns.
And your voice is better heard in the design in which your fellow students are working on right now to do for the public forum.
There are students who are cooperating in this diversion of this energy and anger of students. And that's going to be a public forum. And notice how he's saying, Steve Bartu in Dalton High School, we're taking anger, we're going to channel it into something else. It's not a protest anymore. It's a forum. We're all going to sit around and discuss. And student leaders have arranged this event. We're going to discuss what the issues are today.
And you'll be receiving more information about that.
Your leaders are doing it.
A little bit of information about some things they can do today, particularly around the 10 o'clock hour in their second period class to honor the victims of the Parkland shootings. But other than that, the other thing that we're going to do today is we're going to open up the theater during lunches. And if you would like to come to have that time together with some of your friends or perhaps meet new friends, to take a time for maybe a moment of silence and even pray together as well to honor those victims of the Parkland.
So here we bring in a little religion. We can pray. You can meet maybe new people. We have such a massive school that maybe people you haven't met. And in this encounter full of a soulful interest, you can encounter new people and we can channel we can direct our anger, direct our protest into a constructive engagement.
The theater is going to be available for you at lunch.
In the theater.
Be able to do that. So,
in the lunch break, okay? We're gonna make your protest fit our school schedule.
Come up there and hug a new friend and meet a new friend, and those are all great ways in which to honor the situation that happened at Parkland and to honor those victims as well. So again, those are the things I wanted to tell you today. I appreciate you very, very much. I appreciate you doing what we're asking you to do today and what we're asking you to do today.
And here now, there's the approval. You're doing what you're not having a protest. I'm not going to let you protest. I will not let you be a man. I will not let you be a woman. You're under my control. You may be 17 years old. You may be 18 years old. You're 4 or 5 years into the ability biologically to have children and have a family. But no, you're a child. We, the educational establishment, starting in the 1810s with behaviorists, we have created a new type of person. That is to say, the adolescent. And we have worked diligently for decades to extend the period of adolescence, to make you a child for longer. And now I'm thanking you for being cooperative.
Same things we ask you to do every day. Please make sure that you go to class.
That's the most important thing.
Class period today. Please make sure that you are in class on time.
On time.
And we're going to have a wonderful and a great day at our school today. Again, I appreciate you all. I care about you very much. And I appreciate you doing what we asked you to do today. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Notice that is repeated. We're appreciating that we appreciate you're doing what we're asking you to do today. We're asking you to do something, and we want you to do it. We have redirected all of your energy. And let me ask you this, you, my listener, is that not where capitalism comes from? Is that not where revolutions come from? How can we ever have a counter-revolution against what has occurred to us, against what has been done to us, what has been done against us, if we have to get permission to do it, if we have to do it in the lunch break, if we have to do it in the place where they tell us to do it? Steve Bartow is just typical. There's nothing against him here, okay? But what I'm saying is he is typifying what every school administration does, what every school administration is about. It is about training people to be subservient, to be compliant. We cannot have a protest. We cannot have a walkout. No, we cannot have a walkout. It's forbidden. You might get written up. Let's have our event in the cafeteria. Let's have our event in the auditorium. We're going to open that up for you. We're going to make special provisions so you can have your protest in the lunch hour in our sacrosanct auditorium in our school, our temple of compliance, our temple of obedience. Where are Americans? Where are the real Americans? Are there any left? Or are we all just going to take orders, get our permits, and do what we're told to do? This is David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, Digital FM